Hey there, this is Malorian, and this will be a Warcaster review. And now we're going to move to minions. And for minions, we're going to be starting with Barnabas, the leader of the Gatormen, and going to be talking about really what his stats are, his rules, and then some ways you can play him. Now, for starters, he is speed 5, so slower, I don't know, he's about a regular Gator type thing. Then he's strength 9, he is mat 7, which is pretty decent, rat 3, which doesn't matter because he has no gun, defense 13, which is, but I mean, then you go to your armor, which is 17, and then he also has tough. So you never want to really depend on tough, but it's something nice to have a little bit extra on the card. You never know when it could actually save you. Now, he's a Fury 6, which is what most of the Gatorman casters are. Warlocks, rather. And then he has 3 initial melee, which is really nice to have. The first one is just a regular bite, which is a POW 14. Then he has his Bone Cleaver, which is his big axe. That's going to be a POW 14 again, but this one's going to have reach and also be a magical weapon. Then he's also going to have a tail swipe. You can't really see it, I just swipe with my tail, which is going to be just a POW 12. So, you know, again, not the best of a third attack, but why not have an extra attack, right? It's never a bad thing. Now, looking at the back of the card, first of all, he's amphibious. Now, the amphibious part usually doesn't play that big of a deal. You ignore the effects of deep and shallow water and can move through it without penalty. You know, okay, sure, why not? And then as well, while completely in deep water, it can't be targeted by ranged or melee attacks. And, yeah, basically, again, you almost never see deep water in War Machine. So this whole part that I'm reading here is pretty negligible. You just don't even bother reading it. The next part here is he has countercharge. Now this one is, again, kind of interesting. Of course, whenever an enemy model ends their movement within 6 inches of him, if he's not engaged, he can do a charge against them. And so one of the things you can do is kind of have them a little bit farther back, and if they're coming up and trying to fight your Gatorman posse, you can kind of charge in there and use your reach attack to hit them on the other side. It's something that's kind of nice, but it's a lot of times you find yourself, if you're using your countercharge a lot, it means you're putting Barnabas into trouble. So be very, very careful with that rule. I mean, if somebody is trying to sneak around behind you, let's say Gorman moves up and he's going to try and black oil you. Yeah, countercharge into that guy and tie him up. But I mean, again, who knows? Maybe countercharging up to go after Gorman will mean that you're now within range of an enemy heavy or something like that. So be very, very careful when you countercharge. Next up, he's a Gatorman Warlock, so that means even though that you're minions, you can't take any pigs or stuff like that. You have to actually take Gatormen in your battle group. He also has Unyielding, so this makes his armor even better. So whenever he is engaging a model, then he's going to get +2 armor. Now that means he's going to go up to armor 19, which is looking fairly decent there. Of course, you can always get spiky growth, so that I go to armor 21. So, you know, he's kind of doing more of an armor thing right there. As well, on his bite, he has critical consume. So on a critical hit, if the attack hit a small based non-warlock Warcaster model, it's removed from play. Again, it's just one of the things where it doesn't usually really come up. Maybe if you're worrying about somebody trying to revive or trying to get a corpse or whatever, where that remove from play can be a big deal. But again, this is coming from your caster, and hopefully the caster isn't killing that many rank and file. Normally you want to be a little bit further back and a little bit more safe. But again, something that's extra on the card. Then you get to the Bone Cleaver, and this one's really nice. Once per activation, so can't be during when you're countercharging because that's not your activation. Immediately after resolving an attack in which it destroyed a living enemy model with this weapon, this model can cast a spell cost 3 or less without spending focus. And that's a really nice way where even though he's only Fury 6, I mean really if you kill a model, you get to cast a free spell. Now again, how much risk do you want to put this guy into? And it's one of those things where you like getting that extra spell off for free, but then he has to kind of get into the mix. So of course, if they are trying to tar pit you, you can go in there, try and kill one of the tar pit models, cast a free spell. Why not, right? But again, just something to keep in mind. It's just extra stuff on his card. I actually have the little model here, but I mean, mine's pink and Yeah. Let's get on with the more important stuff. Let's go on to his spells so you can actually see. Actually, all of them are 3 or less. So if you're wondering which one of the spells I'm going to read or ones he can cast, it's really all of them. The first one here is Flesh Eater. It costs 3, range 10, POW 13. And what this is that when a living enemy model is boxed by Flesh Eater, it is removed from play, and this model or a living war beast in the battle group in its control area heals D3 damage. Honestly, guys, you probably are never going to do this. If it's really important to remove something from play, maybe you're going to pull this guy out, or this thing out. But I mean, cost 3 is a pretty hefty thing for him. Sure, if it's free, right? If you go and kill a guy and then you're going to do a Flesh Eater and heal something somewhere, sure, free is nice if it's coming into play there. But I think other than casting it for free, it's probably not going to get cast. Now, here's a great one: Iron Flesh. It's cost 2, range 6, target friendly warrior model or unit gains +3 defense, but suffers -1 speed. So remember, if you're -1 speed, you can't charge. But so normally when you want to use this spell, that's when the posse are going to go in first. They'll charge, then you'll put Iron Flesh onto them. And I mean, the posse, which is normally defense 12, can dirge up to 13, and then this will make them defense 16 Gatormen. And that's kind of a big deal. Also keep in mind too that when you're getting down to it, and if Barnabas needs to get in there and he's going to start fighting it, he can always go and kill a guy with his axe, cast a spell for free, and put this one on himself. Then between Iron Flesh and Unyielding, he is actually going to be, a 16-19, and that's looking very, very solid. So again, very nice defensive stats for him if he wants it. Here's another very important one. This is unique to him, and that's Swamp Pit. Costs 2. He can do it anywhere in his control area. It's a 5-inch AoE. And what you do is you get to place this 5-inch AoE anywhere completely within his control area where it does not touch a model's base. That's one that people screw up a lot, where a lot of times they'll move models first and then just put the ring on them. No, you have to place this first where there's no models. The AoE is Shallow Water and remains in play for 1 round. While completely in a Swamp Pit AoE, a model with Amphibious cannot be targeted by ranged attacks. And so, Gatormen have always suffered from being shot. They have Unyielding, they don't want to be shot, they want to get up there, they want to be fighting. And so, taking away that range game is huge. In fact, to some lists and armies, say if you're up against Signar, if you're up against Legion, whatever, I mean, you can have all the eye of sight you want, you just cannot target me with your shooting. Not just whatsoever, you just cannot do it. So there are ways around it. You can try and spray things, targeting something else with a spray actually hit these guys. You could run a different model that doesn't have Amphibious into there and then shoot your own model and blast damage the rest of the stuff. So there are ways around it, but otherwise, again, very huge for defensive tech. Again, if you just think of this, again, with Barnabas, he could be casting that pit, go into it, have his Iron Flesh on himself. Like, he can be very, very resilient. And, of course, you can fit a posse into one. You can put your beast into another. It's really awesome to have. It's cost 2, so you can get 3 of these out. So really, the vast majority of your army, I mean, if you're at 35 points, it'll pretty much be your entire army. If it's 50 points, okay, it'll be a good chunk of your army. But this is a massive spell that's just really a meta breaker, right? If somebody sees that, oh, wow, you have Barnabas, you just can't drop your shooty list, because if they drop Barnabas, you're screwed. So very important spell to have. Finally is Warpath. This one is cost 2, has a range itself, and when a friendly faction model in this model's control area destroys 1 or more enemy models with a melee or range attack during its activation, immediately after the attack is resolved, 1 war beast in this model's battle group that is in its control area can advance up to 3 inches. War beast can only advance once per turn as a result of Warpath. So on some other casters or warlocks like Chromac, this is a much bigger spell. When you play Barnabas, this is probably not going to be your usual thing. Normally you're just going to be making pools, putting out Iron Flesh. This will not be one you really cast very much. As well, your beasts are not really the best in minions. Normally, instead of spending the points for a beast, you'll be spending the same points to be getting a Gatorman posse. So this spell usually isn't used that much. However, it's a nice one to have in their little toolbox as well, so that if you ever need it, because maybe somebody with Rampager turned you around and moved you out of the way, or maybe you have to get the right charge lane, or whatever, this can be a big deal. So remember about it. And sometimes, I mean, the extra 3 inches can make it so that's what puts you in range for a charge, or what lets you move to the side so you can avoid that blocking model to make the charge. It can be a big deal, but again, it's not usually one of his money makers. He's usually all about the Iron Flesh and the Swamp Pit. Now, his feat is pretty much Krios's, but worse. Non-amphibious enemy models currently in Barnabas' control area are knocked down. So first of all, his control area is smaller than Krios's as well. I mean, if you're up against another Gatorman army that's amphibious, your feat basically does nothing. But otherwise, this is, I mean, you can look at it that way. It's like, wow, it's just worse than Krios. But at the same time, it's a pretty good feat. Being able just to knock things down is huge. You know, sometimes if you're up against a defense skew, let's say you're up against some raiders or some Nis hunters or whatever, you don't care, right? Kayazi, you're just knocked down. And this can be massive for turning things around where, okay, Posse, you each have 2 attacks, everything's auto-hitting, so you don't even need to worry about going for cold-blooded. Just get in there and destroy everything. And of course, since things are knocked down, you're not taking free strikes, so your posse is able to charge in deeper to really kill everything. Even if you can't kill it, if it's an infantry type unit, it's knocked down, so they can't really do anything on their next turn. It's a really good feat. Now again, it's one you have to be really kind of up there, but if you're inside of one of your own pools, you should be pretty safe. So really, really great one. And in fact, you can also be using this to change it into more of a ranged assassination, because just like Krios with a pop and drop, you can kind of do the same thing here. So you'll go up, you'll pop your feet, you'll knock things down. That means they don't block line of sight anymore either, and you can see over everything. And then all of a sudden, if you take something like Spitters, or now we have the Sacravolt where it can shoot, you know, maybe you can pull off a ranged assassination, because if their caster's knocked down, especially if it's a Warlock, it could be in a lot of trouble. I mean, if you knock down Kane 2, it's probably dead if you can get a Spitter or 2 onto him. So again, look for that. It can be a very massive thing, even like defensively, right? Let's say you're needing to charge up, you're up against Crix, and you're like, man, I need to get into there, but he's going to probably come back and really kill my guys. Well, if you charge up there and pop feet, knock everything down, it allows your posse to get in position. They can't really countercharge you, and then on your following turn, sure, they're knocked down, they're not knocked down, and you need to roll a hit, but now you have the initiative. So this is something that can be used offensively in melee. It can be used something offensively for a ranged assassination. It can be used defensively to set things up. It's a very interesting spell. Feat, rather. Some other tricks and tips you can do with this is if you're ever up against War Machine, you can really mess up their jacks. What you do is you would go and cast one of your swamp pits behind the jack and then slam them into it. And if you do that, you put out their boiler and all of a sudden they're inert. And so pretty good thing can do there. It could be lots of fun. I mean, a lot of times if you can get a heavy onto their heavy, it's a lot easier just to kill them. But hey, why not just do it the easy way, right? And just knock them into there. So that's something. Usually that's a lot harder to do because, again, you can only place that swamp pit where there are no models. So if there's any models standing behind the heavy, the jack, that's not possible. But yeah, something to really keep in mind. Now, he really is a caster that I find can deal with a lot of different situations. Of course, he is anti-shooty. He is, if there's somebody has a defense skew, you can get past that with a knockdown. He himself does a really big defense skew as well, so you can really push that. One spot where he does really suffer, though, is trying to crack that armor, right? He doesn't have Parasite. He doesn't have anything there that's really a damage buff or anything like that. So that can really get you in trouble. So a lot of times then you're either trying to get the range assassination, or you're just trying to be a slow grind, right? You're saying this posse here is my super posse, and it's going to slow you, eat you up, right? You can definitely go for that. You could be going maybe for Death Clock again, because I'm basically invincible with this one posse. But again, man, it's a lot more powerful at smaller point games where that one posse plays a bigger role, as opposed to, say, at 50 points, where you could be running 3 posse, and then all of a sudden they just go after the other posse instead. So it's one of those interesting things, but he's a great caster, lots of fun, and that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. This has been another Warcaster review, and we'll catch you later. Bye.